Hello and welcome at Book Lovers Companion. My name is Edith and here with me is returning guest and podcast bro James Michels. Hello James and welcome back on the show.
Hello, thank you for having me on again.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you back on the show after finding the perfect date and time for our conversation. You know, dear listeners, real life does tend to get in the way occasionally. But we made it happen. We made it happen, and it's wonderful to have you back because before we started the recording, you are busy. That's what you told me with a new book. But we also want to talk about book number 3 in your Ice series, Ice Rain, which came out last year. And I have to tell you, James, you have put the poor man through the ringer.
I have. I mean, it's just, but to be fair to me, you know, I don't make up the news. I just report it. So it's
true. So what can you?
Stephen King said.
Yeah, absolutely. So what can you tell our listeners about book number 3 in your Ice series? Like I said, quite a ride and quite the ringer.
Definitely. So for people that have been following me in regards to my Ice series, so kind of, and for those of you that haven't actually that haven't read Ice Rising or Ice Boxed yet, I'm just kind of give you a sneak synopsis about what's happened. In Ice Rising tells the tale of Alexander Lincoln, who ends up joining starting a life of crime, joining a gang because that's what he feels like he has to do to protect those that he loves. So he grabs the moniker Ice and he goes on the street. He creates his own little crew of henchmen. He has a talent for business that he uses to, make money, at a very young age. He starts off in his early teens. He quickly rises through power. So Ice Rising is the first initial rise to power for him. And then Ice Box takes us behind the walls of prison where Ice has gotten himself into some trouble and he has to, do his time, kind of try to stay out of trouble while also keeping his crew on the outside loyal to him and keeping in touch with his loved ones. So Ice Rain, the newest installment, takes us now back onto the street. At this point, Alexander Lincoln, Ice, has finished his sentence. He's back out. He's living with his new girlfriend who he had met while he was in prison. They had started communicating back and forth while she was on the outside. And now he's starting a life with her. They want to, they have some business ideas together. She's very entrepreneurial. And, he's really getting back in touch with everybody. His crew's changed a little. He's noticing that maybe the strong bonds of loyalties are not as strong as he thought. Maybe the rope is a little thinner. His old boss, Smooth, who kind of runs the gang of which he's a lieutenant in, Smooth has gotten into the drug trade, which was something that he preached against when Ice was originally, on the street. And there's also a lot of friction between Ice and Smooth. Ice has he wonders if it was his fault, if it was Smooth's fault that he was in prison in the first place. There's also he also has a romantic interest in Smooth's girlfriend, Viviana. So it's kind of sort of like a love triangle there. And Ice is very conflicted between, his romantic feelings for Viviana as well as his committed relationship with his new girlfriend, Regina. Added on to that is he finds out that there are informants within the gang, not in his crew, but among the other crews that could potentially bring down almost everybody else in the gang, except for Ice and his crew, who nobody really knows about. So his contact, this corrupt police detective that he had aligned with, and this lawyer that he had in his pocket, they come to him and say, listen, it's only a matter of time before Smooth goes down, before everybody gets rounded up, goes to jail, but you're safe. And if anybody's going to step up to run the streets, it should be you. You have a sense of honor, sense of, morals. We feel like if you run things, then, crime would actually, crime would be a little bit more manageable. And ICE considers it, but, at the end of the day, Smooth is the one who brought him in and kind of helped him become the man that he is. So now ICE is conflicted, not just romantically, but he's conflicted between his ambition and his loyalty to Smooth. And then tensions grow between them until it comes to a head when him and Smooth end up going to war with each other. And then it's a question of, will he survive this? Now that he's gotten out of prison, has he gotten rusty since his time behind bars? Or will he come out on top?
Mm. And the end of the book, I mean, it's not really a cliffhanger, but it hints there is more to come, because there has to be more after how you ended the book. I'm not giving anything away, God forbid, because people should read the book. But it does go on, his tale, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There's going to be at least one more book in the series.
Okay.
And then again, because of how I write, I kind of shoot from the hip, so it could be 20 more books. I'm not sure.
And why not? I mean, let's be honest here. The tales you tell are fantastic to follow. And although, I mean, he doesn't walk the straight line. Let's be honest here. Like you said, it's about crime and so on. And yet, you got me behind him. And I mean, you achieved it, absolutely. And like you said, he has a certain kind of moral code others are lacking. I mean, it's also something that makes him, for the reader, someone we can get behind, unlike his boss.
Yes. Yeah. It's, I really wanted him to be somebody that people can follow without being too, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess too taken aback or disgusted with his actions. So kind of like the lovable bad guy, kind of similar to like Tony Soprano from The Sopranos, or Nucky Thompson from Boardwalk Empire, or Walter White from Breaking Bad. You know this person's going to become violent. He's going to become ruthless, and as the time goes on, he's going to be more ruthless. But you can also see what's taken from him, and you see the transformation, and you can really follow that. Okay, he is becoming more and more dangerous. He's descending further and further into corruption. But you also kind of look at what's thrown at him. What cards he dealt with by life and by his enemies. And there's a part of you that, like I said, the ongoing kind of attitude toward him is that there is a part of you that does understand how somebody like that could fall and, keep going down that dark path, even if you don't condone his action.
Yeah, absolutely. And he is briefly flirting with the idea of what would a different life look like. And yet, people like him, do they really ever get completely out of this entangled web of crime?
Some do. I mean, a lot of it is the seeds that, you will reap what you sow. I think that's one of the ongoing themes in my books. With ICE, there's a point where he thinks he can just kind of walk off into the sunset, but it's not always that simple without having to give away what happens. One thing I really wanted to create was a stark contrast between the two women in his life, Regina and Viviana. As you read the book, you can tell that Regina she doesn't judge him based on what he does or where he's from. Part of it is because she really sees the potential in him either way. And, she loves him for who he is and how he is with her. Viviana is, and then in Regina, he sees that, her being more legitimate than him, he really feels a pull towards a more normal life with her, away from the chaos. At the end of the day, she is like his peace. Yeah. Then there's Viviana, who is more of like his ambition. She really wants to, she has a conflict of her own because she loves him, and she also loves Smooth. So, she's kind of on the fence as well. And, but, she's really invested in the life of crime. She's really used to the power and the money, and she feels that, Smooth embodies that, and then Ice also embodies that. And
Yep.
Ice also feels that pull of himself. He feels his ambition. He's very ambitious, and he wants to, he does want more for himself in that way. So it's a conflict between, like, kind of going for the peace or going for the power.
You just said, rightfully so, that this love with a person and this love for power. I wondered while reading the book if Viviana is maybe even more in love with power than Isis.
I think it's very possible. Again, it's tricky because I really don't want to give anything away, but I believe so. Again, we're definitely talking about characters that we're both learning about,
Yep.
So it is fun kind of having this dialogue about people. Even though, like, I'm the one that created them, again, I'm kind of letting them tell the story. And I do feel that way about Viviana, that at the end of the day, she, like, I think she realizes that she needs somebody who can kind of be the strength to her weaknesses. So she needs that kind of perfect partner. And I think she had seen that in Smooth, and he's kind of taken a downturn, but she's still loyal to him. But at the same time, she's also seeing what Ice is doing. And, she's really hesitant on really making a switch, because I didn't want her to be just a totally heartless, ruthless person. I want to give her that human, like, still trying to. I think she really liked. I think there's a part of her that really appreciated how things were way back when, before Ice went to prison, back when everybody got along. And, she saw Ice and Smooth working together and getting along, and how Smooth was this great, charming, brilliant leader. And Ice was, maybe his, like, top lieutenant, one of his top lieutenants, who was, they were working together to really kind of, take over the streets. Back then they were at war with other gangs. Now all those gangs are gone. Smooth kind of runs everything. So I think part of her really wants things to go back to the way they were. But so much has changed that eventually there's going to be the wedge that drives Ice and Smooth apart. And at some point, she has to make a decision. And even not making a decision is picking a side at a certain point.
Understandable. And there's also the question of influence from outside, meaning influence from South America, because you said before, when you described the plot of the book, that they were dabbling in drugs, and Ice was never fond of that. He always said, "Oh, let's keep out of this. Otherwise it gets really, really bad." And yet there is
the hard drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always the danger of him, or of people like him, that they can't keep themselves away from them, because even if they themselves don't want to get involved, they become involved, because outside forces more or less force them to become involved.
Right. And that's another thing about Ice, is that, while he does have his moral code, he, you can tell he really kind of romanticizes the life a little bit, that he really feels that there is that sort of honor.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think nearing the end of the book, again, without giving too much away, he's starting to realize that, times are changing, and he can try to change with them and try to kind of create, kind of control the current as much as he can, or he can get washed away in it.
Do you think, or from what you know about the United States, that one way or the other, no organization that is involved in kind of gang crimes and so on can stay completely out of drugs?
I don't think anything that grows too large. Maybe like the very smaller ones, of like, I mean, there's like, gangs of, like, bank robbers, there's gangs of scam artists. There's, there are kind of smaller groups but they're really usually like very, very, very small in comparison to like, like the mafias and the Russian mafia and the triad and whatnot. I mean, these are huge money makers. And again, what comes with money is what comes with power. So if they didn't get involved in that, then they would be going by the wayside, especially when, it also creates alliances with certain groups. If they were to get into, if a like a Russian mafia group want to get into drugs and they started buying from the a Colombian or Mexican cartel, now there's an alliance between them as well. So it's also strength. So I'd say, I'd say I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's a question of would a large group like that, especially with ISIS gang, at this point they control the streets, what would, if they don't get involved, somebody else will. And that person could amass a lot of money really quick. And with that comes, getting a lot of followers, a lot of henchmen, a lot of contacts, and a lot of guns that they could use to replace. So it's kind of like, like, I think what ICE doesn't realize in the beginning is that, if you don't seize the opportunity, somebody else will.
Understandable. And it's also interesting, you also mentioned it in your recount of the plot, this connection, which are also realized in the book with the police. You said, we would like to have you as the top dog because with you it might be easier to keep the crime down, or that it doesn't get out of control. And it reminds me a bit of reality. I've heard a few years back here in Austria when they said, there was this kind of groups we had sort of understanding with. Don't get me wrong, no deals, but like you said, so we have a bit control. We know what's going on and so on. And there is this other group which we are afraid might get completely out of control.
Yeah. And then, the groups that kind of are more tolerated will keep the other ones under control.
Yeah, exactly.
This is kind of a fun fact, but a lot of the neighborhoods, like back in New York City, that were heavily concentrated mafia kind of strongholds, a lot of them were actually some of the safest neighborhoods because those guys kept other criminals outside of the neighborhood. So it was kind of safer to live there. So it was kind of a touch of irony,
Absolutely.
Yeah, like if because I think a lot of people realize, all right, crime is always going to be around. There's always going to be criminals around. We'd rather have the ones that have a little bit more restraint in what they do. And then a lot of it is kind of the devil, like if this guy, if he tends to, rob banks, okay, we don't have a whole lot of banks in our neighborhood, but we have, but then there's this other guy who robs grocery stores, and we have a lot in houses. We have a lot of grocery stores and houses, but the bank robber keeps him away from the neighborhood. So we can still walk freely, maybe, just go to the ATM instead of going inside the bank. But hey, I'm willing to live with that instead of, these guys that could kick in my door at any time.
True. And what you said about the bigger group, like the mafia controlling the neighborhood, making sure everyone is safe. I think that's what was said about Sicily or in southern Italy for tourists. It's quite safe to go there because the mafia keeps you safe. They make sure nobody's going to happen to you because it's business. And it's always bad for business if something happens to the people who bring the money.
Yeah, I've even heard stories of even in South and Central America, the cartels, a lot of them, they have such a strong presence that, that they have their own kind of security force that will keep certain people safe or, keep certain people away from the problems. I remember a story a few years back when these American tourists in Mexico were attacked. And I think 2 of them were executed by this cartel who had mistaken them for somebody else. Like these were innocent people and they were mistaken for, I guess, people who were more associated with the cartels. When they found out, the cartel that was responsible took the specific gang members of theirs that were involved in this operation, and they actually turned them over to the police because with an apology, saying like, we didn't mean to do this, like, we don't just hurt like innocent Americans and whatnot, because for one, it's a problem, like if all of a sudden a bunch of Americans are starting to get murdered in Mexico, then it's really going to bring a lot more heat down, a lot more pressure from America. So
yeah. And you try to avoid that.
Right, exactly.
Getting the United States involved in your business, not a good idea.
No, not always.
And do you think, I mean, we're talking about street crime. You said he keeps the streets safe, and we're talking about getting drugs into his neighborhood and so on. And what about white collar crime? Do you think that's something that might play a role in the future?
I would love to. Definitely kind of upgrade his operation, so it's not just just what's going on in the streets. And as his operation evolves, he'll have higher contacts and more, I guess, more flashy, respectable positions where he could really gain opportunities to kind of, again, make the pot of gold bigger, so to speak. So yeah, I would definitely love to do something like that in the future. I think after I finish my 7th book, which I'm writing right now, that's probably when I'll be making my 4th edition to the Ice series.
Diversify the crime a little bit.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Gotta keep the story interesting,
Yeah, absolutely. And your income also. It might be even a bit safer to do white collar crime.
I think back then it was probably around his time. It would be like in the 90s and early 2000s, but especially in America, they have been known to really give white collar crime stiffer sentences than they used to. And we've all probably seen like Wolf of Wall Street, where Jordan Belfort, at the end of the day, I think he did like 3 years in prison for $100 million. But now there's a lot of people that are getting, like Elizabeth Holmes she had gotten 11 years. What's his name? From the reality TV star and his wife. He was given like 12 years. Forget his name. Todd Crisply. He was given 12 years for bank fraud, and then Sam Bankman-Fried had just gotten. I think they just gave him between 20 and 30 years in prison. Of course, what these individuals had stolen was in the millions and even billions of dollars, but still, it's it's kind of a little bit more hairy for them to get involved in that sort of fraud and white collar crime.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And reading about Elizabeth Holmes is always fascinating, because I read this book written by, I think it was a Wall Street Journal reporter who wrote about her rise and then even her fall also. I mean, it's fascinating who got involved with her and who she was able to dazzle. And without producing anything for years and years. That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, eventually it was all going to crash and burn, just like Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
I think Bernie Madoff was like the original. He wasn't like the original like Ponzi scheme person, but he was the biggest, I think, of his time. I mean, I think he's been beaten since then, but I think he was the biggest Ponzi schemer of all time at a certain point.
I think so, yeah, absolutely. And you said this was book 3 in your series. There will definitely be another one, because, like I said, it's not a cliffhanger. But still, we are looking forward to the next one as well. But in between, what's happening in between? What are you writing? Or what have you finished? What can you tell us in this regard?
So I have finished my 6th book. It's called The Melody of Shattered Gold, and it is an extension of the Ballad of Johnny Carlo universe. It takes place, so in the Ballad of Johnny Carlo, he worked, he's a hitman for the Argento crime family in New York City. There is mention of a war that the Argentos were involved in with another crime family called the Oro family.
Mm.
This book, The Melody of Shattered Gold, is about the Oro family during those times.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some characters that come back. There's Johnny Carlo comes back, Vincent, Aurora, Dominic, Sal. A lot, they're all younger. It's about 7 years prior to the events of the Ballad of Johnny Carlo. Emilio Oro, who is a supporting character in the Ballad of Johnny Carlo, is actually one of the protagonists in this book. He is. So a synopsis about that book. Emilio Oro is the Don of the Oro crime family. He heads it with his younger brother, Roberto, who is the underboss of the family, and then their youngest brother, Giuseppe, who is the consigliere. They are actually grooming Roberto's oldest son, Louis, to one day run the family because Oro has always run the Oro crime family. During that time, they're in business dealings with this growing Russian mafia that tensions start to rise between them.
Mm-hmm.
There's a group within the Russian mafia that seeks to destroy the mafia as it stands. They feel like it's their time, and they feel like they need to, basically put the entire mafia out to pasture.
Mm-hmm.
So Emilio is trying to prevent a war between his family and the Russians.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Dominic, who in the Battle of Johnny Carlo, Dominic had created this new kind of uber crime syndicate that consisted of the heads of like the largest crime organizations in the country. At this point, he is still consolidating his power. He's trying to kind of get all the mafia families under his wing so he can become the boss of bosses. And the only one who really kind of stands in his way, because the other families are so weak and they respect him so much, the only other one who really stands in his way is Emilio, who is, unlike Dominic, Emilio really adheres to the old code of the mafia. And and during all this, so tensions start to rise between the Oros and the Argento family. Yeah, and of course, I if you read about Don Carlo, there is eventually a war between them, and then Emilio has to kind of keep everybody together. Then the other protagonist is Luis Oro, who is he's Roberto's oldest son. He's much younger; he's in his 20s, and he's smart enough to run the family, but they have doubts as to whether he's ruthless enough. He hasn't really gotten to the violent aspects of crime, but he's very brilliant with his business ideas. And he has kind of not really a chip on his shoulder, but he knows he still has a lot to prove. He knows he still has a long road ahead of him if he wants to one day run the family. And not only does he want to run the family, he wants to run successfully. So he wants to learn. But again, he's also dealing with his, kind of typical 20-something arrogance and whatnot as well.
Yeah.
And then, times are getting worse. The families are starting to, their enemies are growing. And so Lewis really wants to contribute and to really kind of be the one that pulls his family out of the fire, so to speak. There's a lot of kind of family. What I like about the story is that there is a lot of family conflict, but you really see the strong bond that the Oros have for one another.
Yep.
That they really all do love each other. They fight for each other. They're willing to die for each other. You will see a lot of, you'll see Johnny Carlo, of course. You'll see his kind of how he became the surgeon, how he and Aurora met. You'll see his friendship chemistry with Vincent, how in the Ballad of Johnny Carlo, they started off as best friends.
Yep.
In the book, in Melody of Shattered Gold, they are friends. And you really see more of that friendship between them. That's really strong. You see that that growing romance between Johnny and Aurora. You see like all these new interactions when Dominic first meets Johnny and Vincent. When how Johnny and Lewis eventually kind of form a friend, kind of like a friendship between each other, and you'll see a lot of kind of unions that dissolve, and you'll see a lot of enemies become friends, that type of thing. So it's a lot. It's a
Yep.
lot, and there's it's there's a lot of twists and turns, and
Hmm.
to this day, to this day, it's my largest book that I've ever written.
Hmm.
I believe it's about 20,000 words more than the Ballad of Johnny Carlo. Ballad of Johnny Carlo was about 520 some pages, and this
Hmm.
new book's about between 550 and 580, I believe.
Whew,
So it's taking a minute to get edited.
quite an epic then. Absolutely. And there's also already a book 7 in the making.
Yes.
Oh.
So this one's a new challenge for me
Oh, tell me more.
because well, unlike most of my books that really kind of the initial setting is this like seedy underbelly of society with all these criminals. This one's more of classic suburbia, kind of like, Norman Rockwell,
Mhm.
American dream lifestyle. But there's a lot that's underneath the mask. There's so it centers around this. Well, I don't want to give too much away because I've just literally started this book. I just started writing this book on Tuesday, and
Ah.
so yeah, it's different because it actually takes place in Michigan, where I'm from.
Mhm.
So I'm having fun with that, kind of really, bringing my familiarity into the story. Um, I think it's going to talk a lot about communications between spouses and whatnot, how they want to be more open with each other and be more communicative. Even though I've always said I really don't, I write to entertain. I think this one will have some pretty strong messages in regards to marital life and whatnot. So, I think some of this will hit close to home for a lot of people.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of it involves lessons that, I'm married myself. A lot of it involves lessons that, my wife and I have had to learn on our journey on this journey called marriage.
Oh, I believe that. And now that you are on book 7 and then the next one in the making, book 8, like you said before, number 4 in your ICE installment, how would you describe your growth as an author since you started writing?
And I've taken it a lot more seriously. I'm always kind of looking to better myself in my writing. Um, excuse me. And whenever I pick up a new book, it always has a particular challenge to it. And I think that's what really keeps me going is I'm not just writing the same thing over and over and over again. There's always something new that, kind of that I can fit into my arsenal of writing skills, if that makes sense. Like, Ice Rising, of course, was a very challenging first book I've ever written that I would finish. Val Johnny Carlo was hard because now I'm going into like I'm writing a third person. It's a longer book, and I'm trying to keep it suspenseful. Then Ice Box, same character from Ice Rising. Now I have to make him kind of like I have to put him through character development. I have to put him in a different setting. Really kind of make sure it's just not a rehash of Ice Rising. Life Star Corners, my fourth book, was a challenge because it was a collection of short stories. So now I have to learn how to really make shorter versions of these long stories that I write. And then Ice Rain, yeah, that was the next one. Ice Rain, now I've returned him back to the streets, and now I have to figure out how to make this, just not just, you know, Ice Rising 2.0. How do I really make this like, really up the ante with this kind of similar setting and
Mm.
and really develop these changes. And then with the Melody of Shattered Gold, how do I make a book that is even longer than the Ballad of Johnny Carlo? And I knew it was going to be, while also kind of at this point now I have rules for
Mhm.
myself
Mhm.
because, there's obviously, in the Ballad of Johnny Carlo, he's alive. Johnny Carlo's alive. So I can't just write his death in the Melody of Shattered Gold, you know, spoiler, I guess. Uh, now I have rules I have to follow. I can't just, kill off certain characters, let certain characters live. Certain outcomes have to be reached. And then with this new book, it's how do I create something that kind of has like a brighter at first setting that really kind of dissolves into, you know, I guess the sort of chaos that my books kind of go through, uh, before there's the resolution at the end.
Mm. Has your working process as an author changed in any significant ways in starting your first book?
It has. I've really made it a discipline to write every single day. There's some exceptions, like I'll take a break on a holiday, or when I finished the Melody of Shattered Gold and I sent it in to my editor, I actually took about like a 10-day writing break. And I started it after my birthday, which was Monday. So I
Congratulations.
gave myself that. Thank you. I gave myself that little 10-day break from writing, uh, just to kind of recharge the batteries. But pretty much every day I write,
Mm.
however I can, whenever I can, when the opportunity presents itself. Of course, while balancing also, my work life, my home life, my personal life.
Yeah, not that easy, I suppose, especially with your demanding job as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said you are in the process of editing already, and as a self-published or an independently published author, editing is also a very demanding task for an author. Um, has that also changed? Because, editing. Have you, for yourself, found a sort of plan when you do editing? It's one thing to have a plan when you're writing, I suppose, and a completely different plan when you're editing, because sometimes you have to say to yourself, okay, that's it. I have to move on, otherwise this book will never get published.
That's a good question. So that's the best thing to do with the book is once you finish the manuscript, you want to really kind of send it off to people that you trust who are willing to read the book and kind of give you feedback on making sure that the story flows, in
Mm.
my opinion. And then you want to do the editing. Like once you know that the story works, now it's just a matter of tweaking, and making it
Mm.
cosmetically pretty. Um, when it gets to that point, then I'll give the book a rough edit myself. Just kind of go through and say, okay, I spelled that wrong. That was a typo. That needs to be, I need quotation marks, things like that. There may be some things that I'll catch myself, and then because I don't want to overwork my editor. So once I kind of get the rough edit done myself, then I'll send it to him. And then he'll usually print it out, and we'll meet somewhere, and he'll kind of give me uh, tips and everything, like all the advice, and usually it's just chock full of red marks and stuff that I have to fix. Hopefully, I caught enough of them with the rough edits, so it's not like a total it's not a hack job. Um, and then after that, I'll go through the edits, probably send it back to him, and we'll go through it together again, and then that's probably when I'll be ready to publish it. I want to make sure that it all works. And I
Mm.
mean, I guess some writers can edit themselves, but I really believe you need a second set of eyes to really kind of catch your blind spots.
Mm. Yeah, understandable. Like you said, you get blind. And do you also, for yourself, because someone mentioned it once, that reading your story out loud to yourself helps in the editing process?
I actually have not done that.
Okay.
I'm scared to be honest. I'm very critical of my own work, at least like when it's first coming out. So it was quite a discipline for me to have to like go back into my work and really fix it up. And there's times when you see like a mistake you made, and you just want to like smack yourself and say, "Man, like how did I miss that?" Or how did I do that? I think there was one time I created like these two different characters and I gave them the same name. I said, "Well, that's confusing. Let's go ahead and change that up, and whose name do I change and whatnot." So yeah, it can be a little hard. I remember I wrote a short story for a podcast and I listened to them on the podcast, they read the whole short story, and it was like I was kind of like at the edge of the seat, not because I was like in like suspense about like the story I wrote it, but just like, okay, how's that sound? I'm very critical of myself.
Oh, lots. I think most authors are. I haven't encountered one who isn't critical of him or herself. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we know that you've written this book of short stories, and I've listened to another podcast by the lovely Terry M. Brown recently yesterday actually. And she had a group of women in the studio online who have published an anthology called Feisty Women. And it was interesting what they said about writing short stories, because quite a few of them came from the long version. Writing novels is different from writing short stories. And they admitted that, so Terry also said herself, she would love to do more in this kind of writing exercise. She would like to learn more about writing short stories. What is it for you, or what is it like for you? Would you like to go back to this kind of writing short stories? Or do you think, maybe not so much?
Actually, no, I'm very interested in writing more short stories. I really submitted some works to other contests that were accepting short stories, and I kind of created the stories on the fly. But I have like 5 or 6 of them that I wrote, and even if they don't get accepted, I'll still have those stories that I could maybe make into another collection for myself, so that Life's Dark Corners, I can also have another crime anthology. So that's definitely a strong possibility. I do enjoy the like the shorter stories. It's kind of it's like a really good sense of accomplishment when you write a shorter story that's like 3, 4, 5,000, 5,000 words. Because it's like, wow, like I was able to create a whole story in like a span of a week or two. Like, that's pretty impressive. 'Cause especially when I'm writing books that take months upon months to finish, and I'm able to just kind of like create this short story on the fly and say, okay, hey, that's that's something else I have to offer to people.
Mm. Would you say that it's also a good exercise for authors to try their hands on a short story, or even flash fiction is even shorter?
Yes, I would say so. It's great practice to kind of, create singular characters, or, yeah, I think it's a great practice. And I think some people, for people that are aspiring to write a full length novel, it might be good to write short stories first. Maybe write a short story, then build upon it. Create like, additional chapters of it and whatnot. And you might actually, you might take what was originally a short story and make it into a novel of your own.
Mm.
But I'd say it's tremendous practice.
Is it easier this way, do you think, to find your voice as an author when you practice with short stories before you dive into a novel?
To be honest, I'm not sure, because when I first started writing, I was writing full length novels. So yeah, on that one, I'm not completely honest. I think for some, definitely, like I said, it's very good practice. I think for some people, especially people that have a hard time finishing their work. I know a lot of writers that have a hard time finishing novels because they run out of patience, or they doubt themselves. I think if you start giving them shorter amounts of shorter works to do, short stories, travels, flash fictions, I think it'll help them to really get the confidence they need to finally write that full length novel.
And just like writing a novel, that's something I've learned yesterday when I listened to the ladies talking about short stories. It's actually also a different kind of craft you have to practice. It's the same with novels. It's the same with short stories. You should not underestimate this kind of writing.
Right. No, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same with writing, let's say, scripts. Is that something you would be interested in, writing your own script for your books?
Um, that's very interesting. If it came down to it, yeah, I'd probably take it on as a challenge.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's, of course, there's professionals out there where if I finish the work, I can hand it off to them and say, "Hey, does this make sense?" And then we know for sure. I mean, if the opportunity came my way, I would like to try that out. That way, even if it's horrible, I don't have any regrets.
Mm.
Like I tried it, and now I don't have that loud what if in my head. You know,
Yeah.
or my sleep.
Yeah, absolutely understandable. And I mean, let's be honest here, your ice series does have a potential for Netflix and Amazon Prime and Apple TV. So if you're listening, producers out there, just you should take it up. And I have to say, you wouldn't regret it. James, I mean, really.
Right. Yeah, please do, please.
Absolutely.
At least a mini series. I'll take a mini series.
Absolutely. And would you have a favorite if you can, if you would have a voice regarding casting, who would be your perfect Alexander Ice Lincoln?
That's a very good question because I mean I have to be very careful because I would need somebody who is, he's at different points in his life from the age of like 14. At this point, Ice is in his like early 20s, so it would have to be somebody who's very new to the scene. I guess maybe they have a few credits behind their name. I mean, I'm definitely open to suggestions. Like I I can't pick like Denzel Washington or Samuel L. Jackson. I don't think I'll be able to have like a guy who's in his late 60s, early 70s play a 15-year-old. So, but I'm definitely open to suggestions. And I mean, if anybody wants to like, just email me or whatever, like, hey, try here's like a video of my cousin acting or something. Would he be a good idea? I'd be like, sure. If it comes around to making it, I'll mention his name and hopefully give him some work.
No, absolutely. And I mean, they're always on the lookout for new ideas and new plots. And I'd say I've read a lot of interesting books, fascinating books, great books from indie authors, which would make a great, I don't know, like you said, miniseries. Because I got the impression that miniseries at the moment are the thing. You get even the big Hollywood names into TV shows or into miniseries because you have more time to develop those characters. You can do them more justice.
Right. And it's also not asking a big commitment from the audience to keep up with you year after year after year. It's something they can, watch in a week and just enjoy it. And then you can go on and create something else. Especially nowadays, our attention spans are so small. My wife and I are binge watching The Walking Dead, and it's like, it's kind of getting to the point where it's like I still enjoy the show, but it's like, okay, like how many more episodes do we have before we're done? But I'm starting to kind of want to move on to other stuff. Not a reflection of the show itself. I think it's a great show, but just kind of like okay, you really kind of hold my attention that day.
I do agree. I mean, I've also watched The Walking Dead. Who's your favorite character, by the way, in The Walking Dead?
Oh man, I'm gonna get hate when I say this. I gotta say, probably Negan. To be honest, I know everybody hates him because he killed Glenn, but when he was the antagonist for the two seasons, just like while everybody else is just grim and serious and depressed, here he comes with jokes and stuff. It's like, yeah, he's a jerk, but it's like, I can't help but laugh at just the stuff he says. He's just a very fun character to watch. And then like when you watch him kind of move towards his like more redemptive arc, and it's like, wow, you can really see that he's really trying to change for the better. I like Daryl too, and Michonne. I think they are probably my three favorite characters. Everybody else is I like Eugene too. I think Eugene has really grown as a character. I think all of my wife's favorites have died, so she's kind of just hanging on. But no, and it's funny because she hated Negan too. But we were watching, we both laugh at the stuff he said. When he's, when he's sitting on the porch with Carl and he's holding Judith, and all the neighbors are walking by and they're scared of him. He's like, "Hey neighbor, I'm gonna have a barbecue later," and stuff. And they're like,
Yeah.
This is like you say, he's a jerk. I know a lot of people hate him, but it's like he's fun to watch.
Absolutely. And I'm sure the actor had a lot of fun playing him.
Yes, I'm a fan of him too. My wife was actually a fan back from Grey's Anatomy, so yeah.
Okay. Well, like you said, Daryl is one of my favorites, and also Carol.
Yes. Carol's a very strong character. I do like her transformation, how she was just like this this kind of like victim in the beginning of the show, and now she's like definitely like
badass,
one of the strongest characters. And even then you really see her kind of evolving as a character. Yep. She's like, she deals with grief and loss, which are kind of definitely, I mean, the reoccurring themes in everybody's life, but for her especially the type of relationships that she's lost.
Yeah.
That kind of parallel from each other. It is fun seeing that version of her, especially compared to her character in the graphic novels. Because I read the graphic novels, and spoiler alert for people, I'm sorry, but in the graphic novels, Carol actually died during the prison setting. She ended up kind of committing suicide. She let a zombie bite her. And in this version of Carol, you see her actually overcome all this stuff and still, remain a strong person who's getting stronger. So,
absolutely agree with you there. Sure, we got a little bit off track, but anyway, it's always fun to getting off track, James. It's always fun to do that. It might also be interesting for listeners to hear about those little tidbits of what's going on besides the books. But is there anything else you would like our listeners to know, James?
For anybody who is interested in picking up Copyright Reign or the other Ice series, they are all available on Amazon. I have the copies myself here, for what you're looking for. All available on Amazon on paperback, Kindle, and Kindle Unlimited. Of course, also I want to kind of plug my other two books, The Ballad of Johnny Carlo, that we briefly mentioned about, and Lifestar Corners, my collection of short stories. All of them available on Amazon for Kindle, Kindle Unlimited, and paperback. And also, I'm actually doing a deal. So until The Melody of Shattered Gold is published, I'm actually doing a buy one get one free deal with The Ballad of Johnny Carlo and Lifestar Corners. So for anybody who buys a copy of The Ballad of Johnny Carlo, I will send you a free copy of Lifestar Corners. All I'm asking for is proof of purchase, and I would happily send the book your way so you can check out two of my books at once. And that's going on until The Melody of Shattered Gold is published. Perfect. So if anybody wants to follow me on social media as well, you can follow me on Facebook.com/JamesTheRealMike, Instagram.com/JamesEMichels, Twitter.com/JamesRealMike, TikTok.com/@JamesRealMike, and you can also follow me on YouTube at James Michels Books.
Ooh, no, well, you are everywhere these days. Splendid.
I'm almost omnipresent, yeah.
And you're here as well. It's always an honor to have you back on the show, and you're always welcome back.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Wonderful. It was wonderful to have you back, and we are also looking forward to reading more from you, James.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to publishing more books.
Splendid. You did enjoy this episode as much as we did? Then hit subscribe and don't miss the next episode. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you like to support us and buy us a coffee, you can do so via Buy Me a Coffee and other platforms. You can find all the necessary links in the description. Until next time.